We'd like to welcome the audience for yet another podcast, the Tech Factor podcast by Purple Quarter. We got Hrush in the room. Thank you so much, Hrush, for allowing us in your office and getting us to do this.
Yeah, thank you, Rupa, for having me on the podcast. And Tanya Singh's office now, not mine anymore. Sadly, beautiful space. I miss it. But thank you for having me.
Great. So, for all those people who don't know you, Hrush, I'm just going to start with my first question. I'm sure you do have good memories from ClearTrip, and now you've started your second startup, which is Fincent. Could you tell us how this journey has been? Because these are two different domains, right? One's the travel world, and the second one has gotten you into the lending space, or if I can call it the fintech space, if I may put it that way. So, could you tell us how did this happen?
Sure. So, ClearTrip was, I'm not really a travel guy. I tend to be more of a design or product guy or a combination of those two things. And ClearTrip came about because my first company, Paperplane, uh, our first client, we were a company that made websites for clients. And our first client was Thomas Cook.
Right.
And after trying for 6 years very hard to persuade Thomas Cook to take online travel seriously, we just said, you know what, if they don't want to do it, the heck with it, we'll do it ourselves.
All right.
So that's kind of how I got into travel. And but by no means am I a travel expert or any of those things, right? My focus has always been on building a product for a space that
Okay.
I'm operating in. And that was fantastic. I think ClearTrip was an absolute roller coaster of joy. We had a great team, and from stage to stage to stage, it stayed super fun. Um, and then we reached this space where we had largely exited to Concur and then SAP Concur. And I guess in terms of product, things were sort of built out, right? And as a guy that likes to make things first and foremost, I was a little bit feeling like this doesn't excite me every day
Okay.
anymore.
Okay.
So I stepped out of ClearTrip and then worked on a venture studio with Suneet and Varun, two of my longtime design collaborators at ClearTrip and before, to set up Design Capital, where we played the chief product or chief design officer roles for startups at different stages.
Sure.
Because those are hard roles to hire for, right?
Absolutely.
Still, I'm talking about this was in 2016. In 2022, there's still hard roles to hire
Still
for.
is. Yeah.
But I knew that at some point in time I wanted to go back to build something myself again with a team and all of that. And it was in running Design Capital without a third business I started in my life, right?
Right.
But the first one where I didn't have a business, quote unquote, business co-founder. So for the first time ever, all of the financial bits of running a business rolled up to me.
Okay.
And that's kind of when I realized, oh my God, this is a crap ton of work that so far in my life I've been just lucky enough to take for granted completely, right? And that's where the genesis for Fincent came about, right? Where all of this financial work of running a small or medium-sized business takes up so much time
True.
from the business owners
True.
that, and all of that time is not value creating time, right? It is time that goes into value administration at best. And so while we had been evaluating ideas for what we wanted to work on next as a startup of our own, it was sitting right underneath our noses, right? So I look at it more as building the best product for the space you're operating in. And sometimes you happen to be a domain expert from that space. Sometimes you're not. I've generally tended to be not.
Sure. So, do you kind of visualize things in your head? Because I know that, I'm just going to pick your brains on ClearTrip. I think the design is fabulous, right? It's so seamless as a user. If I were to actually pick sides, it'll be the side that is easier for me to maneuver, then rather than look at something which is complicated, right? So, do you visualize these things in your head when you're building something out? Because you're playing two parts, right? Design and product.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I absolutely visualize them, not just in my head, but at ClearTrip, we usually went from sketches on a piece of paper to code. We actually had the good fortune of having a team that lived by the mantra of all designers should code. So we never had a layer in between the design and the front end.
Right.
It was coded by the designer themselves. So yeah, you absolutely visualize it, whether it's in your head, whether it's in programs like Photoshop or Sketch or Figma, or just pieces of paper.
Right.
But in addition to visualizing it, I think a lot of it, a lot of people think that ClearTrip achieved a great user interface, and I'm sure we did that. But it's also keeping a very close eye on how is the user's journey or the user experience. How are they feeling when they step through each phase of the product, right? And the user journey. So that to me is actually the most important part of design in a product, right? How does it keep a user engaged from the time they got there with a certain goal in mind,
Right.
to helping them accomplish that goal and out. And at ClearTrip, we always said like minimizing friction is no one's come here to be entertained.
Correct.
Right? We're not a news site, we're not a community site. They just want to find what they're looking for, buy it, and leave.
Right.
And that's kind of why ClearTrip was designed the way it was.
Sure.
Minimize friction, support the users in completing their task as quickly as possible. So it's a little bit of both, right? Keeping the front end of the product in mind, as well as who's facing that product.
So when for the genesis of Fincent, it comes to me when you were just mentioning it. Looks like it was a product visualized first because there was a need, because you were the consumer at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Typically as an SME.
Yeah.
And that's when you said, hey, this is something that you want to solve for. So you were the product guy first, if I'm correct.
Well, I would say I was our own end user first.
You were the first end user, okay?
And that's actually, I think, a wonderful position to be in to build a product.
Sure.
Because when you're scratching your own itch, you build it with that much more passion, that much more integrity, and that much more just heart.
Right.
Right.
Right. So there's always this, debate about product and technology. We were also chatting a while back on, people do tend to mix these two up, and they think they can do both together.
Yeah.
Right. Do you think it can be done in unison, or does it have to be two separate teams? Does it require a different set of mind?
I think when you're a handful of people, maybe one person can handle both of those things. But as the company grows and scales, it's a big mistake.
Right.
Because it's near impossible to wear those two hats simultaneously. Because I think that over the long term, in order to continually build great products and release great products, you actually need three equal seats at the table, right? You have the product person, you have the tech person, and you have the design person.
Right.
Now, while they're all sitting at the same table, they have three separate roles
Right.
at this table, right? The product guy's role is to make sure that the product that ships is a product that is going to meet the business goals associated with shipping that product.
Correct.
The design guy's role is to make sure they meet those business goals along with a product that is designed to deliver the best user experience.
Sure.
And the tech guy's role is to make sure things happen on time, scope doesn't creep, People don't over-engineer. Neither the product guy nor the design guy overreaches in terms of ask. So there's a lot of conflict at this table, and it's out of this great conflict that the whether people disagree but commit or whether they agree and commit is secondary. But the conflict is required before you can put out a great product.
Sure.
And when you have one guy wearing two or three of these hats, that guy's from one of these roles, I guarantee it.
Correct.
And that mindset will win every time.
Sure.
Right? And you will end up with a subpar product. So that's the impact on product of having someone double hat this. The second is on a day-to-day basis, when you think about what the product person does and what the tech person does at a leadership level, they're so different, right? The product person literally is the liaison to every function in the business, providing their inputs, saying, I need this, I need that, or this is what customers are telling me. So whether it's customer service, marketing, sales, biz dev, everyone's giving this into the product person.
Right.
And the product person's role is to sort of synthesize this into a roadmap, build business cases for it, decide what needs to be just put on the shelf, what needs to be chucked away forever, and then what's going to be actioned into the roadmap for the quarter, for the year, for whatever it might be.
Sure.
This is more than a full-time job, right? The tech guy needs to handle the delivery of the roadmap, right? What's coming, as well as keeping everything that's already up, keeping all the lights on, keeping things running smoothly.
Correct.
And it's just impossible. It's impossible to do justice to both of these beyond like garage stage.
Right. Right.
So I think it's a mistake.
Okay.
I think they're equally important roles. So it's not as if product is elevated over engineering or vice versa.
Right.
But I think it's a mistake to think that you want one person running those two things.
Right.
They have very different roles.
Very interesting perspective. I think I would want to like now jump into Fincent.
Sure.
And we spoke about how you thought of this
Sure.
as an end user.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the product? What are you looking at bringing out in the market? What can users expect?
Sure.
Yeah.
So we're actually building Fincent for the SMB market in the US, just because part of Fincent's revenue model is SaaS based. And I think we all have learned the hard way that building SaaS for India is a fool's errand. You're going to have to end up doing something else to make money.
Sure.
And I'm firmly of the belief that you should be able to charge customers for your product.
Right.
Those are the business models I like. Those are the business models I trust.
Sure.
So we're building it for the US market. And the problem we're trying to solve is that at the SMB level, every business owner ends up assembling a patchwork of different point solutions with which to run the financial aspects of their business. So they'll use X for payroll, Y for accounting, Z for taxes, and so on and so forth.
Sure.
These systems don't do a particularly good job of talking to each other, or forget playing well with each other, right? Which means the poor business owner or someone on the team is hopping between these all the time, and keeping these in sync becomes an incredible challenge, and quite frankly results in doubling or tripling the amount of work, because you're always going telling one system what you've done in the other.
Right.
And we're in the 2020s now, right? So there's really no reason that this shouldn't get better.
Right.
So we want to build a full stack platform where SMB owners have one single pane of glass to come to deal with all the money in their business,
Sure.
whether that's just the bookkeeping or payments or banking or XYZ.
Right. So I'm presuming, I'm sorry I'm interrupting, but I'm presuming that the design's going to be kick-ass for this one as well, though it is going to be a SaaS platform. And SaaS makes it even more challenging for you to actually think of design which is seamless. So how are you thinking of this one, Hrush?
No, I think it's incumbent upon us to deliver good design,
Okay.
right? Because This is, at the end of the day, it's you own a business yourself. I don't know how much you deal with any of this, but if you did, you can imagine it would not be the funnest part of your job,
Yeah, true.
right?
True.
So now it's not even fun to begin with,
Yep.
and then you have to deal with clunk. It's it's like getting slapped twice,
Sure.
right? And the one slap you're willing to take because you have to.
You don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other slap, well, let's see. Hopefully, we can soften that blow.
Right.
So yeah, of course, the design is going to be as good as we can make it. And the wonderful part about serving the SMB space is you're pretty much like at liberty to design in a way that is consumer grade,
Okay.
right? So consumer grade simplicity in a SaaS product. That's what we're aiming for with Fincent.
Sure, sure. The other piece that I really wanted to, check with you is from looking at how you're going to be building this platform. What do you think would be the future for what you will go out there? And would there be like, where I get reports based on what I can pay off, or because we're talking about retailers, right? Yeah. And
No, so actually, we're not talking about retailers, right?
okay.
We have chosen to focus on the white collar services space,
Okay.
right? So
Sure.
more like your business,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
But you still do need reports as well, right? Something as simple as which of my clients are the most profitable, which of my projects are the most profitable.
How do I manage my wealth if I'm making profits?
Yes,
Yeah.
all of that, right? So we've actually been live since last December, and we've just crossed over 100 paying customers. And
nice.
thank you. So it's just about helping you keep on top of this stuff easily and near effortlessly, right?
Sure.
It is a SaaS business at the end of the day, so the human insight or guidance you would want is it's still kind of incumbent upon you to go find someone else. Now, for instance, we work with a bunch of fractional CFOs, and if you said, "Hey, I want someone to help me plan for buying two companies over the next 2 years," then we'd say, "Here's three great guys. Choose one of them." So does that answer the question? Or
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It, in fact, brings me to another question that's popping up in my head. So they would have been using another SaaS platform already.
They use 7 of them.
Okay, so
That's the
so did they? How did you manage to bring the data from that to the new one? Did you integrate it?
Yeah, so if you think about the US market, we have sort of co-opted QuickBooks, which is to the US market what Tally is to the India
Sure,
market.
sure.
And so Fincent is completely integrated with QuickBooks. So
Right.
even though the business owner never needs to look at QuickBooks if they don't want to,
Right.
all data is maintained in sync with QuickBooks.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
really nice. So they do get to see their past data on this new
Yes,
platform. and
absolutely.
They don't have to go back there. So it's you're saving them from one slap. They still have to go through the one piece.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
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 All right, I get that. So what's the vision of, when the reason why I ask you is because a lot of CEOs in India, particularly, and I see a few of them in the Bay Area as well, do don the hats of a product visionary. So sometimes it can be a little bit of a color glass approach.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you've done product yourself, so I think I have the liberty to ask you. So, what's the vision that you have for Fincent? Where do you see yourself going in 2023?
2023, just broadening and deepening the platform. As I said, we're building it in 3 layers. So just getting I think we have 2 of those layers in place already. By the end of 23, we want to get the 3rd layer in place. But if I was to talk about the vision, just overall, not just for where the product is going, but what drives the business and the company, it's that we actually want to free more creative energy in the world to create,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Because that's what like moves human potential forward.
Sure.
Bean counting doesn't,
Right.
right? So like I said earlier, right, there's things you have to do and there's the things you started the business to do. This is why you started the business. All this other stuff just came as baggage with it.
Sure.
So if we could free more energy to focus on value creation instead of value administration, we think that would be quite a win for the world.
Oh, wow. So these are going to be new, could I call it as new launches on the platform, or is it going to be new things the customer has to actually go ahead and subscribe to? So, how is it gonna
So
work?
we're a little early to say, but yes, they will be all coming one by one to the platform.
Sure.
So the customer, like I said, our goal is to give them one place to go, so they don't fragment their attention and have to keep all of these different things in sync. Um,
Right. So if I were an engineer or a product person or a design person intending to join Fincent, why should I? What should I aspire for? What you guys, saying to a lot of young talent out there?
So the message is very, very clear that the North Star for Fincent is that we want to help small and medium-sized businesses succeed.
Right.
Right? Now, success means different things to different people.
True.
So, beyond the point, how we help you succeed is by making all of this easier, by giving you a lot of your time back. But it's a little over the line for us to dictate to you what to do with that time or what success means for you. We just know that the challenges of dealing with this, if you look at small business mortality, I think over 55 to 60% of small businesses fail because they don't manage cash flow correctly.
Correct.
So it's just removing this difficulty, unlocking what is often a very complicated domain for people, right? That none of us are financial experts necessarily
Sure.
when we start a business. We
Sure.
started for reasons of our own because we're good at design or architecture or people or what have you. So that's what we tell the young people joining us,
Sure.
is that we're here to help businesses succeed.
Awesome. So sometimes, Rush, this is what I firmly believe. People like to listen to complicated things that one is solving for. But I love the way that you're keeping it very simple.
Yeah.
Because you've identified a problem, and you're saying that you want to solve for it because there is an end goal.
Yeah.
For even the person involved who's going to use your platform. Right.
Yeah.
I love the fact that everyone's at a gain here. It's a win-win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Roopa, let me tell you, I this one you obviously play by ear depending on who you're talking to, right? Someone I'm talking to might get turned on by complexity. Someone might get turned on by simplicity, knowing that there's a lot of complexity underneath. Because
Sure.
simplicity at the surface is never delivered without tremendous complexity underneath.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So it is complicated. I used to say this at ClearTrip, I say this at Fincent.
Sure.
Making things easy for our customers makes them very hard for us.
Sure.
But that's the job.
Right. That's very interesting. So I'm going to deviate from this and
Sure.
talk a little bit about, you're on Twitter quite a bit, and that's how we connected as well.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to ask you, so there is a lot of talk about low code, no code. This
Yeah.
is like doing the rounds, and you speak a lot about coding
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
So what's your view, from building grounds up to saying that, hey, why don't we look at low code, no code, and
So we do look at no code, no code, and I push people to look at it all the time. I think it's situational,
Okay,
right?
okay.
Let me put it this way: you can let's say we're building a physical structure,
Okay.
right? Let's say it's the doghouse for your German Shepherd.
Okay.
Now I could order a prefab kit off of IKEA or wherever and put pieces together myself, and you could say this is the analogy for no code or low code,
DIY. Okay.
right? I didn't have to write, I didn't have to cut a tree, I didn't have to make the planks of wood, I didn't have to size them all perfectly, I didn't have to drill holes, none of this.
Right.
I was given a bunch of pieces. and told you can put them together.
Right.
Great. So for that use case, the no code, yeah, go for it.
Sure.
Right? But now imagine for a moment that you're building your new office building for Purple Quarter.
Right.
Are you going to call for this from a prefab guy?
Nope.
No.
Yeah.
So it's situational, right? You can't, it's not everything looks like a nail because this is the new hammer we have.
Right.
So I just think that there's a little over optimism in terms of what no code is going to enable. And I just like to, my perspective is that it's amazing what it's already enabling, and I'm sure it'll do more, but it's not going to be, code and coding are not going away.
Sure.
You'll never trust the prefab kit for building your structure, which is an office building from the ground up.
Right. Right. So there are a lot of people who we speak to at Stealth Mode and Series A who do tend to go to consulting orgs. I'm not saying consulting orgs don't do a good job,
Yeah.
but they do end up rebuilding. So I'm taking a cue from what you're saying that it's situational.
Yeah.
So one needs to assess what they really want to do.
Yeah, if all you want to do is pull together some reports from a database and the no-code, low-code tool is helping someone that doesn't know how to write SQL queries do that, is great. It's a win-win for everyone, right? Now the engineering team has more bandwidth because they're not like dealing with that guy's request for these reports. And that guy is able to fine-tune those reports until they're giving them exactly what they wanted.
Sure.
So, but throwing things away, there's again situational, right? I wouldn't necessarily say people are throwing things away because they were built in a no-code way. Sometimes you build things so fast at the bootstrap or seed stage, and you know that you've cut so many corners.
Right.
You've not anticipated, you know what's coming down the pipe, but knowing it, you've kept your blinkers on because you've stayed focused on shipping fast.
Correct.
So sometimes, very often, and I think the smarter founders, the smarter engineering founders will throw away something that was the V1 faster rather than later.
Very nice. We're going to replay this multiple times when we when we publish our podcast for people to listen to. Well, I had one more thing to ask you. The ChatGPT, which is doing the rounds, and a lot of people talking about it. I saw one tweet and I kind of was intrigued where a gentleman put up saying that, hey, content, of course, seems to be getting published pretty easily.
Yeah.
And they said product could be automated through this as well. I was intrigued. Can product be automated by something like a chat GPT, which is going around? I found that to be...
At this stage, I think that's a bit of a stretch. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because I think, and I think the innovation in product is synthesizing and combining things that already exist in a way that they haven't existed before.
Sure.
Now, we talk about things like generalized AI, right? Or machine trained AI, etc. And so these machines at this point in time, they're only capable of learning from what has come before them.
Correct.
They're not necessarily capable of saying, hey, you know what? If I stick that engine here on a wing, it's going to do this.
Right.
So seems a bit of a stretch. I think you could replicate products maybe in a few years.
Sure.
But I don't think I don't think you'd see the iPhone come out of an AI. Look, everything in that iPhone was there before the iPhone.
Right.
Touchscreens existed, cameras existed,
True.
blah, 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 modems existed. It was just put together in an entirely new way. Right? The same thing for the Macintosh that came before it, the iPod that came in between those two things.
Right.
They're just new combinations. But the important thing being not combination, but new.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know that we've hit sentience yet in AI, or it seems a bit of a stretch just because I think AI today is at the point where it can flawlessly replicate what it has learned from.
Right.
I don't know that it can create something entirely new.
I think it's also this it's a similar response for design as well, because design requires a lot more creativity and thinking what the consumer wants, and that keeps changing by the go, right?
Yeah.
If
Yeah, that's the other thing about product, right? Is whether it's actually design or product, to me, they're two sides of the same coin. But that's the other thing is, can the AI get to a point where it is anticipatory, right? Because the successful products and the successful innovations are successful generally because they understand what is an underlying motivation. So take travel and ClearTrip, for instance, right?
right.
No one buys a flight to buy a flight, right? No one says, I want to spend some time in the sky and hence I'm going to buy a ticket. No, they're buying where they're going,
Correct.
right? Whether that's home to see mom, whether that's the Maldives for a holiday, whether that's Boston for university.
Sure.
They're buying where they're going,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
So now understanding that motivation makes the decisions for you, helps you make the product and design decisions, right? Where again, I don't know that AI can yet come close to understanding those things. It understands B trees, input, output, all of this. But understanding true human motivation, I think we're wide away.
Miles away from.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
with you on that. So that actually brings me to another question, Rush. Loads of companies in India focused on B2C, customer centric, solutions. Um, you play the role of a design and a product person. So what is your input for even the newer startups that are coming up? What would you like to share with them? What should they watch out for?
Uh, Short answer is, it's like, don't do it.
Okay, why would you say that?
I think B2C, uh, at least what we've seen so far, right? And I don't mean just in India. I mean kind of anywhere.
Sure.
Most of them are one-off transactional businesses,
Right.
right?
Right.
Some of them end up uh, fomenting a habit, some of them don't, some of them are fungible, some of them are middlemen. There's all of this, right? So when that's the overall dynamic, that transactional dynamic that you're playing to, you have the digital customer acquisition tax to pay repeatedly every time, right? At ClearTrip, we're reacquiring Roopa as a flyer every time she wants to travel.
Sure.
So it's not necessary that you'll only come to me.
Right.
So I think there's ways around that, subscriptions, what have you, that some B2C businesses are now doing. I think those are easier. Jury's out on whether they'll actually work and scale. But I think these transactional businesses, it's tough for this reason, right?
Sure.
You don't get the opportunity to build enough value in the relationship with a customer.
You've said no to B2Bs, you're saying no to B2Cs now.
India's a very tough market, right? Like we're, I'd say, if the US is a money-rich, time-poor market, we are diametrically opposite, where we are time-rich, money-poor. So that's why B2B is hard, because when I come to Purple Quarters office with my little sales kit and say, Rupa, buy this, your answer is always, but what will Jignesh do? Right? Because you're not going to fire Jignesh. right? He's not going to get fired because you got the software. So what is this software going to do? It's going to do something a little bit faster, a little bit better, a little bit prettier. None of those things is going to change your life meaningfully. It's not going to change your P&L meaningfully. So that's why B2B is hard, because we have too many people and not enough value for their time. So, and B2C, I think, in addition to the challenges around sustaining a relationship and repeat purchase, etc., and just the Google, Facebook tax, all of these things, I think the market is shallow, right? I know that, like, Kunal at Cred, how many times has Kunal over the last 4 or 5 years talked about the number of credit cards outstanding in India and the number of unique credit cards outstanding in India? And I think that the second number, unique credit cards, is probably in the 15 to 20 million neighborhood, and the other one is somewhere in the 30 to 35 million neighborhood. And now let's look at all our D2C startups. That's your universe. Right? Who are you going to sell to outside of that? How much can you scale? So that's the other big macro level challenge, is that we're actually, and I think it was someone at the Ken that had actually put together this little diagram which said, right at the top, he had put some number on the 10 to 20 million. It was India's digital consumption pyramid.
Sure.
And he said, this is the Hollywood cohort or whatever. And that's exactly right, because it's so tiny that it just gets difficult to scale something.
It's super motivating for a lot of startup founders.
No, look, I think founders are driven by their own reasons. They're
true.
not really going to care what, like, I say, right?
Sure.
So take it, leave it, pinch of salt, whatever.
What about aspiring product design folks who want to make a living out of, wanting to become the head of product or head of design in India? What do you think they should be looking for? Because I see that is extremely one area where we have very few people, right, in the market. The talent's really scarce. The opportunity as well, I find it very, very hard to believe, is slightly distorted, if I may use that word, because like I said, there is a lot of CEOs who are doing the product themselves. So who are you learning from, right? So what is your view? What would you like individuals to do if they want to pursue something in design or product?
So I think for both of those, actually, the answer is, if you're just getting started, right? One of the key things that you should do is immerse yourself in the best of those things.
Okay.
It's to your taste, right? But whatever you think the best is. Like, we're sitting in this office, there's a reason there's this many books around, right?
Right.
For design inspiration.
Sure.
Because this is how you learn at an early stage, right? You learn just through exposure. And then take what you learned there, apply it a little bit yourself, see how good, bad you think you are, get a little bit better at the craft of it, right? The nuts and bolts of it. And then actually go get a job with one of the people you admire the most.
Sure.
That's what you should do. People always say, I need a design mentor, I need a product mentor. What is this mentor going to do? Like, you're going to meet with them once an hour for a month?
Right.
What's going to happen?
True.
Right? Whereas the smarter thing to do is go work for the guy you want to be your mentor, because not only will you get to spend 24 hours a day with him or her, but they'll pay you for it.
Sure.
Right? So I think it's not that complicated.
Right.
Do those things well, right? And that should be enough to take you to the next stage.
Awesome. You simplify a lot of things, which is really nice. I enjoyed myself thoroughly on this one, Hrush. It was a pleasure to have you on our podcast. Would there be any parting words that you'd like to tell our audience?
No, listen, if you might have heard me be pessimistic, but if you're a builder, keep building because I think it's that intrinsic motivation of being a builder that is often the key force between success and failure. So keep building, and thank you for having me, Rupa. It's been great.
I really enjoyed this one. Thank you so much.
Thank you.